Welcome back to the updated Ranger Guide for next-gen content and the future that Ranger's gonna have. Because since the last one, quite a bit has changed in both skills and gear. We've gotten some absolutely massive updates. And so the last guide I put out is pretty out of date at this point. They changed a lot of the flows, a lot of the skills. We got Karazods now, different crystals, Oldakit is coming really soon too. So I felt it appropriate to try and do an updated guide before I go ahead and roll off of Ranger in like 6 days. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Alrighty, so the first thing we're going to go over is the new updated gear, because it has changed a decent bit since the last guide. So for one, we have Karazods now. And Karazods are just best in slot for accessories, like, just bar none, nothing gets close to them. Distos are still really good because the AP gain is really potent because they beat, or at least they match, Sept Karazods, which are pretty hard to get, so having Tet Distos until then, until you have everything else at Sept and then you can trade them out, still is a good idea. And that's what I run. If you want the DP swap in order to be a little tankier, so you don't have as many issues with positioning, that's more than okay. It's just more about where you think you are skill-wise. If you need the DP and survivability, you go for the Karazods earlier. If you don't really need that and you want the kill potential, then you go for Distos until then. Gear-wise, we're still DR because we still don't have any evasion passives or buffs in the kit entirely, so evasion is really hard to make remotely viable. We are getting Aetors soon as well, and so of course we'll be going to blue Aetors, just because, again, we're still not that evasion-based, so there's not really a whole point on that. Sub-weapon, we are still running Nuver because AP is just the stat you go for. Now, if you have enough ranks in your Karazods that you can still hit the 330 with the Black Star, granted you higher AP than I have, but if you can hit that bracket, then as of right now, that will be better, because you'll be able to use the ignore resist that Black Star comes with in order to have better chances of landing that CC when it can land. Granted, that's being changed on PC. I don't know when we're going to see that or if we're going to see that anytime soon. So, depending also if it's like you're playing on capped content and you're already like super overcapped on AP, swapping to the Black Star so you have the better DP survivability but also the ignore resist, should help out quite a bit as well. That being said, that's roughly the base gear you want to do is obviously just Karazods, get your cups in as soon as you can. Blue Fallen Gods for Dons and Aetors. And then last time we briefly talked about the difference between Often and Black Star, and how Often was technically better once you got it to C20 and all that. That is no longer as much the case because of the fact that we didn't get the evasion change that we were supposed to be getting, as well as the crit damage and stuff that Often had that made it slightly better. Everything else now has the AP difference isn't nearly enough to warrant it for that accuracy loss because we're still in the old evasion system. Now, if that evasion system were to change and we still don't have sovereigns, then yes, Often will technically be better because it has more AP and more human damage. And so if you're running C20 Often, you'll be able to do a little more because the evasion won't be a problem. But as of right now, with the evasion changes we got, Sovereign around the corner, I hope. Black Star into Sovereign is by far best in slot. The C20s don't really get that close. And then lastly, the artifacts. So you have your best in slot artifact is easily going to be the ranged AP. You're a ranger, your goal, get kills. Ranged accuracy is also still pretty good because we have the old evasion system, so having both sets I really like. In my accuracy set, I run Skill Master for the all special attack damage and it has a little more accuracy in it. In just the AP set, I run Watch Your Back for the back attack damage and AP. And then in my BSR set, This is for Deadeye and PvE stuff. That's whole separate talk. I run the all-out attack for the crit damage and that because it's more beneficial in PvE for me. Also allows me to use my BSR a little more often, so for PvE I would recommend running the BSR artifacts with the all-out attack. Gives you the AP, gives you more BSRs per hour, which means just better grinding overall, because grinding on Ranger is really bad. Exalted Bell's Heart, obviously, it just is what it is. If you have enough gear score, you're looking at like all Nav, Karazats, and stuff like that, what you actually do is you swap out the Exalted Bell's Heart for the Alchemy Stone, the Superior Destruction or whatever. Because it gives you better of these stats, the active stats, and you don't need the sheet gear anymore. However, that is super high gear score, and really, I mean, there's not a lot of players on console that are ever going to really hit that anytime soon, but that is what you would do when you get to that tier. So that's just your base gear. Now we're going to go into the crystals, because there is some information here that is gonna change and has changed from recently. So first, I have this setup. This is my raw AP setup. This I made when we got told that we got the evasion change. We didn't get the evasion change, so this setup is not that good. It just isn't. It's sad, I hate it, but that's just a fact. We are getting Visionaries soon, which means the set will get a little stronger. Visionaries are just stronger. L-Cars, we are getting those on the 10th. Very important to upgrade those as soon as you can. L-Cars are just still best in slot crystals. Every build has to have them. And Visionaries are just an upgrade to them. And then for PvP, obviously this is a mainly human damage setup. It has a lot of the crystals that give human damage, like the Alucus, the Karmes, I have RBF Vipers, Red Spirits, all of those to give me extra human damage, and then the special attack I chose the crit damage. For all AP, just for some testing and stuff, and then I also run, instead of 2 Vipers, 2 Ultimate Macalades. This gives me 11 AP, making me hit harder. The problem is that 40 accuracy loss has been way too detrimental with the old evasion system that we have, because we're still not updated yet. If we get updated and that evasion change actually happens, this setup will do more damage overall than an accuracy setup, because it'll be hitting into DR better, and DR is its own headache of stats at the moment. And then I have my accuracy setup. Pretty much same crystals, mainly human damage setup. It's the only difference is it doesn't have the Macalades, it has Vipers. And then I have an accuracy crystal in it. I wish this was a Bon. I have not been lucky enough to get one yet. But this has incredibly high accuracy in comparison, so it's a lot better for dealing with evasion memes and stuff like that. I'll swap between them pretty consistently, and then in this one I have the Mysterious Darkness, also because it just has the accuracy on it. The back attack is very helpful in comparison, but that we're going to get into on skill rotations and damage types, and that all of the things. But generally speaking, for crystals, you always want your 2 L-Cars, your 2 Alucus, and your 2 Red Spirits. Those are pretty much mandatory for PvP, and then obviously whatever percent damage type crystal you want, whether it's Mysterious Darkness or Corrupteds. I always run red tier. I don't have another tier. I don't want another tier. I don't PvE that much. I go with red tier because it gives more AP. You can go with Gurns for PvE. It gives you a little better drop rate, so that can help you a little bit. It's personal choice, honestly. And then your other slots can be filled with either HP or DR, or like me, you can go for more AP with the RBF Vipers and RBF Karme, because it's, I mean, another 36 human damage, pretty good. It's a personal choice, though. Pick your poison. And then, obviously, I have an HP setup for, like, for capped sieges and stuff, where HP's uncapped, and so you really want all the HP you can. Everything in here generally gives me HP. And then I do have the Ascensions in, because these are still really good for sieges and stuff, because with Ascensions you can get into spots that generally other classes can't get to, making you a lot safer, meaning you can use skills a lot more freely, and that just overall is better for the team. being able to drop 10 to 15 skills uncontested versus, 4 or 5. But it is a personal preference. I really like them. If you don't want them, run more HP. It's kind of how you choose to run it. But that is going to do the crystal and gear. There's not a whole lot of build diversity in these at the moment, just because of the way Charizards have streamlined everything and how the current systems for evasion and DR work. There's just one build, that's what you run, and that's how you get to it. The crystals have a little more choice, but not by that much. But with that, we're going to get into the changes to the skills and how the new flows and stuff all work. Alrighty, so with the new skills we got, changes from last time, there isn't a whole lot changed. We did get the hit rework and all that, so some of them are a little worse, some of them are a little better. It's not a huge difference, but it is, enough. Turn that down. So, with Razor Wind, it's a little less consistent against evasions than it used to be because its hit rates got reduced by quite a bit. But overall, it's still pretty good. The only really big changes is all of the down smashes in our kits have been removed aside from Evasive Landing Shot. It is the only down smash left. The problem with that is you should not be using this as a combo extender. Don't. Generally speaking, this is going to put you out of range of any sort of combo extender unless you're doing a melee combo. And this is also one of your only iframe skills, which means if you use it for a combo, you're kind of screwing yourself over if you get jumped, because now they're going to be able to hit you and they're going to kill you. So generally speaking, your goal is to kill in the 2 CCs or 3 CCs you get. So you need to dump as much damage front end as you can, and if you don't, you need to get out right away. Because they will get back up, and they will probably kill you. Another really important part is understanding that your team will drastically change how well you can perform. By yourself, you are a threat, but you're not, scary by any means. With a decent team, you are a force to be reckoned with. You can easily kill multiple people as long as someone else is CCing for you, because they can do the down smash extends, so you just need to worry about dumping damage. It's great. The flows that we did get changed are pretty interesting. With Charging Wind, we can now flow out of Charging Wind with Penetrating Wind, which is super cool. And then from that, we can flow directly into Bypassing Wind, which super cool. And then immediately go back into Charging Wind, so it has its own self-loop. And you can kind of just loop that into itself pretty consistently. It's not that good to use it off of cooldown. It's not as bad as a lot of other skills to use off of cooldown. But the fact that it can loop into itself pretty much permanently is really interesting. Another change that I didn't know had happened was there's a way to cancel the backstep animation of Shotgun or Ultimate Charging Wind. So normally when you use it, it pushes you all the way back and has this big long stagger animation. Thankfully, someone pointed it out to me. I didn't know it. I'd never really used this skill, so I didn't really know about the flow. But with the addition of Binding Arrow we got, which is our Magnus, you can cancel that backstep. Not only do you not go backwards, it cancels the animation, but still does the full attack into another skill, so you can flow into Binding Arrow super quickly, so it just allows you to do way more damage in a quicker burst than just a normal shotgun. And thank you to who pointed that out. I'll have to go look later, and I'll put it up on screen. But they honestly helped me create brand new flows for everything. It was super helpful. Those are kind of the biggest changes, was the removal of down smashes and the change of that flow. The 2 flows as well as shotgun. The only other big one was the change to Roaring Arrow, which hurts so bad. So originally this was a channeled skill, which means as long as you had stamina you could keep using it, and it was a knockdown. It not only is no longer a knockdown, no longer has a down smash, but now is only a one-off skill. You use it once and it ends. It's such a massive nerf to the skill that it is literally almost completely useless to use now. Doesn't have good damage, doesn't CC, and only real reason to use it was as it had a forward guard. This doesn't have a forward guard, but it has knockdown on last hits, at least. It still has the CC. Its damage is still pretty good, and it has special attack modifier, so this is by far better to use. It just because of the fact that it still has a CC and the other one doesn't. If you want the protected skill and you want to lock yourself in place with a frontal guard, you can. However, there is not a whole lot of reason to use Roaring Arrow anymore just because it doesn't... Its CC is what made it a really good skill. It no longer has a CC. Granted, Fury Arrow also no longer has its front end CC with the hit stutter. It now only has the knockdown on the last hit, so that is pretty bad. Neither of those changes were in patch notes, and I am kind of mad about that, because it is a really, really big nerf to not even be mentioned. But it is what it is. At this point, with semi-decent attack speed, you can still get this off super quickly. If you full buff and everything and use that, you can get it off super fast, so it is still a really good ranged catch. Like, you can get all shots off really quickly, and its damage is actually pretty respectable, and if that knockdown lands, you can immediately follow up with the rest of your kit that you normally would. And all of that's done within the knockdown timer, and so that's, you know, a massive rotation of skills. It does all incredible amounts of damage. So it is just much better than Roaring Arrow now. And it was really sad because I really, really did like Roaring Arrow. Squall Shot, Tearing Shot, it's a personal preference thing. I run Squall Shot because it's still a little better in PvE, and I don't really like swapping between the two loadouts that often. And then it also has really, really strong damage. Tearing Shot being a ranged stun is huge. Running this as your ranged CC in a good opener is really, really, really powerful. My only problem with it is its connectivity is really wonky and it misses a lot. Just like hits but doesn't do any effect, doesn't do damage or CC or anything. I don't know if that's a coding with just certain ranger skills, because a lot of them do that, or if it's this shot specifically. But honestly, I would run Tearing Shot for PvP more often than Squall Shot. Squall Shot's just better overall for what I like it for. Tearing Shot is far better for PvP, and generally speaking, that is what we're here for. So, Tearing Shot for PvP is just better. I'm just stuck in my ways from Squall Shot. It's how it is. And then the last one. Wind Explosion versus Will of Descending Current. If you want the extra protections from Wind Explosion Shot, you can go for it. It's not a bad idea. It gives you an extra SA skill. It's an incredibly long cooldown for just an SA and not even a very good SA. But if you need the protections to get away, if you are playing more flex tier, more in and out type of playstyle, this is by far better. However, with the change they did to the shreds on Ranger, Will of Descending Current is amazing. So, not only is it still its range knockdown with a forward guard, which is super, super strong, it's also a 30 DP shred, universal DP shred. So, you using this can CC people, but also help your entire team, your entire group, your guild pushing in. You hit this, you hit 10 people. 10 people are now much, much squishier than there were. And that stacks with add-on shreds of 20 DP. So generally speaking, because you use this, everyone's going to be minus 50 DP. And in the DR meta we have, that is huge, terrifyingly scary amounts of shred that is so helpful. On top of, it's another one of our only CCs. It is very strong. It is wonky to try and use, I'm not going to lie. But when it lands, it is so good. So there it is. There's both DP debuffs, both the 30 and 20. It is very strong. I personally will say that it should be used more often than Wind Explosion, just because of that new shred is so good for PvP, PvE. It just is. If you want the protections, go for it. It's not a necessarily bad idea. It's just for how long the cooldown is and how short the protections are. It is hard to say, like, oh, it's so much better because of the protections. We don't have a lot of protections as is. So I'm a firm believer of your goal is to try and blow things up before you die, because you are going to die. But for Awakened Ranger, I think they use it more often than Will of Descending. I don't know much about Awakened. I don't play it. I haven't even fully finished the quest, so there is that. But I personally choose Will of Descending far over it. It has better stats, in my opinion, than Wind Explosion. Tearing Shot is better than Squall Shot, and Fury Arrow is just far better than Roaring Arrow now. They nerfed Roaring Arrow, in my opinion, way, way, way too hard. Locked skills, Moving Shot, locked, Pinpoint, locked. They both are super, super bad. No point in ever having them unlocked. Will of the Wind. This needs to be locked. Now, the only reason this needs to be locked is because it has... I want to say a flow. However, it's not supposed to be a flow. It shouldn't work when it does, but it does, and so I have it locked. And if I want its DP shred, which is the 30 DP, if I need that, I ring menu it so I can use it that way. But it blocks one of our strongest main combo flows for some reason. There's no reason it should, but it does. And that's really annoying. So I keep it locked. You can't, if you want to keep it unlocked and you want to use it naturally, go for it. I would still recommend ring menuing it over anything else, just because it's blocking a really strong damage flow, and being able to ring menu it, you could still use it as is. And then I lock my E-buff, because I popped that off of ring menu as well, just because there are a lot of skills that use X button, and I don't want to accidentally use this instead of the skill I want, because I'll be like running or something. It's a whole separate conundrum. All the dagger skills I keep locked, or dagger and kick skills. They're not great. There is a flow you can do off of, I believe it is Crescent Kick, which allows you to bypass into a lot of skills. The problem is it's really complicated buttons, and it hurts my hands to do it. And off of that, you generally don't want to be that close to something to use that full flow, versus using it off of a different skill from a safer distance where you're not just going to get CC'd. It's a flow back from an older time before we got the changes we got. Flow, Fall Call from the Sky. Do not lock this. I know it says A after surrendering or kicking. Thing is with Succession and the prime skills we got, you can actually flow off of this with a different skill, and it's actually super helpful because it's one of your only SA infinite rotations. It's not actually infinite because you have big gaps on the start and the end, but it is a protected skill you can use on loop, and that is super helpful for getting away. Call of the Earth, Tree. This is all commonly known as Tree buff. If you need something dead and it's an evasion meme, you pop Tree and you blow them up. That's what it's for. It's super, super strong. Honestly, even after its many, many nerfs, it's down to 6%. It's still one of the strongest abilities in the game, hands down. Passives, all your passives are the same. And then your guild skills. I personally go for Knight's Defense, the 5 melee DP, because I notice myself get chased by melee classes more than anything else. Mooses, ninjas, strikers, warriors, stuff like that chase me more than anything else, so I grab the melee DP. Let's say you get chased more by sorks, or witches, or sages. Sages are really popular now. Grabbing the magic DP, also not a bad idea. Whichever one you notice you get killed more by, I would grab that one over melee. The only one you don't grab is the ranged, maybe, with Deadeye releasing, and how terrifying Deadeye's damage is. This may not be as bad idea to allow you to trade with Deadeye and kill her. Problem is that will only affect Ranger, Deadeye, and Archer, and there are way more magic or melee classes that are going to be trying to kill you than just those three, because those three are going to be focusing melee classes and not worry about the other ranged. The ones you do not grab are the evasion rates, specifically because we don't have the evasion necessary on the class to make those worthwhile. That's not saying you can't. If you're running full evasion, you know, you're running green Dawns, green A-Tours evasion offhand, and you were like, I'm an evasion ranger, then yes, go for the evasion rate, but that's not a good idea. So that's roughly the changes to our skills. It wasn't a whole lot changed, just the big shred and the 2 flows. And then next we're going to go over the combos that I like to use, followed shortly by the add-ons. And the reason I use the add-ons is the combo that I use, so they work full with each other. After that, we're going to go over rough positioning and ideas, and that's going to call it for the video. So without further ado, let us move on to the combos. Okay, so with our combos, we have our main bread and butter damage combo, and it's super simple. So it is your tearing arrow or roaring arrow. I use tearing arrow because it's faster, does more damage. Into shotgun, binding arrow, bypassing flow, penetrating flow, charging wind. That's the combo. It's super simple. Its button controls are really, really easy. So it's just back X or back square, RB, R1, A, X, and then you just hold both triggers or R2, L2, all the way through until you do the combo. When you're buffed correctly, it is super fast. Does the full, can get it off inside of 1 CC every time. Super helpful. And that combo can kill most general things with just the one combo. Now, the combo is technically designed to be used on a back attack. The problem with that is you're not really going to be getting back attacks too often, like generally intentionally, just because you're going to be focusing the front of them because they're running at you, you're running at them. But if you can position yourself good enough to get this kind of like side angle, which can happen a lot, you can see this back attack once he stands up. Well, not if he's looking at me. That's cheating. But you can get back attacks from, like, the side. So you don't have to be, like, directly behind him. It's just kind of like this weird angle that you can get it. The further away you get, the less tight that angle is. Like, if you're super far away, you can get it from almost the side. It's really interesting. But back attacks are always going to be a lot better because all of the special attack modifiers that they have are what they are. Now, that's like your main damage combo, and then you have a few like side ones. So you have your normal roaring arrow into penetrating wind, which is just hitting LT while you're firing, or L2 while you're firing. And that's what I like to call the montage flow, because whenever you watch a ranger montage, they do a lot of that. They do a lot of that, and it looks really ugly. It is very effective. It's nowhere near as strong as it used to be, because it has been nerfed many, many times. But it is still potent. It is still strong. It is hard to, like, say don't do it at all. However, you might have much better rotations if you incorporate a few extra skills into it, especially the change we got to charging wind flows. Because that's a really strong flow. Because charging wind comes off of cooldown by the time the flow ends, and so you can get... Once it's off cooldown, you do it again, and you can get a re-CC. It's really strong. It's really potent. That is also a really strong one. Squall Shot or Tearing Shot into Ultimate Blasting Gust is really good for AoE. It has down attack, so like let's say you see a Guardian jump in, they get a bunch of knockdowns, you can follow up and you get a lot of pepper damage across all of them, and you lower everything, because then right after you can follow up with Ascending Current, which also does knockdowns. It has its own bounds, it has a lot of CC, it's really strong. It is what it is. So picking when you do what you do is always really potent. We don't have a whole lot of combos per se, just because we have like 6 damage skills and they all just flow off of each other. So depending on which one you start with, it's almost always shotgun, binding, bypassing penwind, into charging wind, and that's your general combos. Then you have your 2 rebomb skills, which also work as flows into the other ones. And then you have Willow Descending Current. And I generally use this as an opener. Just because maybe the CC doesn't land because they're always going to generally be in protections, but the debuff, that's why I open with it. That debuff is terrifying. The amount of extra damage you can get because you have that debuff applied is crazy. So opening with that debuff because it's the ranged version of the debuff, so I can prep that off. And see, all of that he's been CC'd the entire time. I've stayed completely away, and I applied all of my shreds and debuffs and buffs, all from a complete safe distance, and he could say nothing about it. That's why I like it. I like to use that as the opener. There aren't really that many like skill rotations you really need to run. Your protection rotations are also the same. You have your 2 back steps, then the third one won't be protected. Never, and honestly, in my opinion, Succession has the weird flow where if you do it twice backwards in a row, you do that really long one. That one has really big gaps in it. I know it shows fully protected, but it's not. It has really big gaps, so generally you want to do back and side, because you'll just spin your camera while you're doing it. Because if you do it back and back, it's really bad. But you do back, back, and that gives you your iframes, and it does the better animation, because you can do it in a slower time. See, because you have the protections all the way through your hop step, so if you don't panic and you patiently wait it out, you get much more iframes. And then obviously you almost always follow up with evasive landing shot for the extra extended iframes in SA. If you do it that way, you get much longer protections than if you just panic. It's a good second difference. That may not sound like a lot, but in the world of protections, that is huge. And then after those, you follow up with Twisting Wind and Riding the Wind. These controls are the same. Evasive Explosive Shot is back or side on RT or R2. Evasive Landing Shot is both triggers LT-RT or L2-R2 after an evasive skill, or generally speaking, while you're in the air. Now that's really important because it allows you to do a cool little trick that I'll go over in a second. And then Riding the Wind and Twisting Wind is just side LT or side L2. You can use it backwards. I really advise not to do that because it has this weird issue with the camera where it'll cause your camera to freak out if you have any sort of directional input while you're doing it. So I recommend not doing that. I would just spin your main camera and then do it that way. And then that's your SA protection. So if you do your iframe protection, your evasives, and then they're still chasing, you do your twisting and riding. And then if they're still chasing, you spin your camera a little more and you do forward RT or forward R2, which is Call of the Wind, like we were saying earlier. Or sorry, Call of the Sky. Now, why that input is the way it is for Succession, I believe Awakening has it too, but no input says it does that. There's no buttons, there's no guide, there's no flows. It just does. I don't really know why. I'm not going to really complain, because it has the protections. The problem is it has, as you can kind of see, the protections end before you touch the ground, and they don't start up as soon as you leave the ground. There's a good 5 to 10 frames on either end of it that are completely unprotected, and so you can get caught out really, really bad. However, a lot of players don't know that those gaps exist, so when they start seeing you flipping, they kind of just sit there and wait. And so you're essentially feinting that you have protections when you don't, and it's kind of funny. But yeah, no, you don't have protections on the start or end, so you got to be careful about where you're jumping. If you jump into something, you will get CC'd on land, and you'll die. Now, like I was saying, there is a special interaction, like I said, if you use in the air. So you can actually use the skills from the air. So if you jump and do back RT, I believe, or back R2, you'll do your explosive evasive shot, and you'll do this really big back jump. That's really cool. Another one is if you do jump and then both... oh, did they remove... if you back step, so while you're holding back, so you're backing away, you jump, you'll do evasive landing shot from fresh. You don't have to use a skill for it. Which is really interesting because it allows you to use that skill on its own without needing to burn a different cooldown. So if you're not holding back when you do it, you'll do the explosive shot version, which burning the whole cooldown for just that is really bad. So you always want to be moving when you do it. And this allows you to do a slightly different rotation, and that will trip people up so much more than anything else. Well, you could also do it from forward movement. I believe side movement is just as long as you're not standing still. Yeah, as long as you're not standing still, you'll do the evasive shot, which is really helpful because it allows you to feint. Another important thing is you can't use the skill on cooldown. A lot of ranger skills you can use on cooldown. Evasive landing shot is not one of them. Neither is binding arrow. So keeping it on your cooldowns is super important. But that's its own set of issue. Most classes have that. Ranger is one of the only ones that has to learn that for our more important skills later on. But yeah, those are your protections. None of them are great. They have pretty big gaps in them. They are really short, and they have long cooldowns. And that's really rough. The only one that doesn't have a cooldown is the Call of the Sky. The problem is it has its gaps, so there's nothing you can do to stay infinitely protected. It just isn't. You can keep up protections really long, and if you can mind game your way away. Or another important thing is using your terrain. Like, if I jump behind this rock, their CCs, most classes, won't hit me. So this gives me the 1 or 2 seconds I need to get my cooldowns back. Another really important thing is using Charging Wind to get your cooldowns back. You are completely protected while channeling and charging this. Using this to reset your cooldowns and be immune to CC is helpful. Keep in mind, you are still very, very squishy while you are charging. Your SA damage reduction is only 10%, and your base damage reduction is also really, really low. So you're using that just to get the 1 or 2 seconds you need to get the skills back off cooldown before you start running away again. That's it. You also do have the frontal guards on your Razor Wind, which is just X or square. Then you also have the SA while you are charging Tearing Arrow. Not while you're firing, only while you're charging. Really important, because if you press the RB at all, or as you saw, it will automatically fire after a few seconds. So if hands are off the controller, it's still going to auto-fire. You lose protections while it does that, so you've got to be very careful about that because it can get you killed. You also have the Frontal Guard on Will of Descending Current. That's also helpful. You have the Frontal Guard on Ultimate Blasting Gust, which you can flow into off of Blasting Gust or Squall Shot / Tearing Arrow. I use it off of Tearing Arrow because naturally using Blasting Gust is really bad. You almost always want to use it off of just Evasive Shot. I don't believe there's a way to flow into Ultimate off of the movement version. No, there's not. Okay. Then your another big movement skill is Ultimate Blasting Gust, which just gives you the movement shot and firing off Blasting Gust. It's a knockdown. It's a knockdown only on cooldown. I use it as a attack stim because it's really helpful that way. You can use, instead of Tearing Arrow, you can use Blasting Gust as your follow-up. So you can do that. It allows you to flow a lot sooner. It's the exact same combo as before. Extreme Charging Wind, which is A or X, followed by Binding Arrow, which is B or Circle, followed by Penetrating Wind, Charging Wind, or Bypassing Wind, and then Charging Wind. Those are just both triggers or L2, R2. It's the same flow it's always been. It's very, very helpful. It's very, very strong. All your combos are going to be a skill into that subset, which is the Extreme Charging Wind into Charging Wind, that full flow. And then whatever is your starter skill will kind of change based on personal preference. I like Tearing Arrow because it's super fast and it applies 4 debuffs with what I have it set on because of my add-ons. Obviously, depending on what you choose, will be a little different. I have it on DP and Evasion, then it also has the Slow and Bleed. I really like that because it's super fast, has down attack, so it's good to follow up with. It's really fast, has really high damage. That's why I like it. A lot of people like using off of Razor Wind. In my opinion, I don't really like Razor Wind. It does less total damage over a longer period of time, but it is protected. So, if you want the protections more, go with Razor Wind. I want to do damage, so that's why I go with Tearing Arrow. You obviously can go with Blasting Gust, because it also allows it. There are a lot of skills you can flow off of. I mean, I know some people that use it off of their evasive skill, because it still allows the same thing. Like, any skill that you can flow shotgun off of, you can do the whole combo, so work around, see what you want to run. Not much has changed in the realm of combos. The only big difference was, like I said earlier, the Penetrating Wind flow off of Charging Wind, and then the change to the Shreds and Rebombs. That's going to cover most of the skills. Nothing's really that different, but still driving home the need for keeping your evasive skills off cooldown as much as you can. If you don't need to use them, do not use them, because there will come a time when you need to use them, they're on cooldown, and you'll die. The damage flow's pretty much the same, except for you can kind of flow into each other a little easier now. They cleaned it up, especially with the new frame rates. The combos are a lot smoother and not as choppy. Your damages are the same. With that, we're going to go into the skill add-ons and why I run the skill add-ons that I run. It is fairly simple. I run them because this is the combo that I run, therefore this is the buffs that I run. Blasting Gust is just a stim. I'm generally using the movement skill to position myself a little better, so I always have the crit rate and crit damage. Crit rate and crit damage is good. No need to not have them. But the main flow generally goes with Tearing Arrow as my opener. So I have the first knockdown from Descending Current. Well, a Descending Current. So that's a 30 DP shred. Tearing Arrow is then followed by a 20 DP shred, and it has down attack. So knockdown into down attack means really big damage, and it also is a secondary shred. That's followed by Extreme Charging Wind or Shotgun. That you can't put an add-on on. Kind of irritating, I know. But you can't. But that just does damage. That's immediately followed by Binding Arrow. So Binding Arrow gives me my attack stim and my extra damage to humans. If my attack stim has fallen off from my normal ways, this allows me to get the rest of my combo off guaranteed super fast. Extra damage to humans means more damage. That's helpful. Attack speed, more damage, helpful. That's immediately followed by Penetrating Wind. This gives me air attack and crit damage. The reason why it has air attack is the skill itself used to. I don't know if it still does. No, they removed it as well. They removed its air attack modifier, but they didn't remove it off of Charging Wind. So, if this flow hits all correctly, it'll be knockdown into that. This can float sometimes. If it did float, this Penetrating Wind would land in an air attack modifier with the air attack damage list used to do stupidly high damage. That was removed. I'm still mad about it. Can't forget, but the air attack damage now is for Charging Wind, for its air attack modifier. So after Penetrating Wind with the air attack and crit damage, because the crit damage from Blasting Gust most likely would have fallen off. If not, this makes sure it's still up. But with that, I now have an air attack damage, and I have my crit damage. I have all my damages ready. For Bypassing Wind, which gives me more crit chance. This means I should be at 100% crit chance, or around 80% for Charging Wind. And at 80%, this is going to crit more often than it's not really helpful. But then the last skill is Charging Wind. This has air attack. If I haven't overcapped their CC by the time I'm hitting Charging Wind, or if I overcapped it early and they're standing back up, Charging Wind has a good chance of giving the knockdown. If it does, there is a chance that the second part of Charging Wind, because it has 2 hits, I don't know why it does this. It's really wonky, and it shouldn't work that way. However, it does. Because Charging Wind has 2 hits. The second hit can get air attack if the first hit is the knockdown. I don't know why. There's no explanation to it. That's not how it's supposed to work. However, it does. It's very inconsistent and very random, but when it does that, the air attack damage and the air attack modifier allows it to do really, really, really big damage. So that's the general combo, and it's based on Tearing Arrow's combo that I ran. Lastly, the last part of my add-ons is very, very basic. It is Primed Regeneration. This is your self-stim. Gives, on its own, 10% attack speed. If you have it with the add-on, you get 20% attack speed. Woo! This allows you to do flows way faster than usual because you get 20% more attack speed. Then I also gave it back attack damage because it's kind of funny. When I get back attacks, it hits really hard. Now, that is the rough add-ons and skills. Next, we're going to briefly touch on percent damages, and then we're going to go into positioning after that. Alrighty, so percent damages are really wonky. And I don't know if it's because its console's really wonky or if PC's really wonky too, but they're wonky. So you have 4 types of special attack damage. You have crit, back, down, and air. Ranger has access to all 4, technically speaking, but generally you're worried about 3. You're worried about down attack, back attack, and crit. Now, the reason why is if you don't CC, you're gonna crit and back attack. That allows you to do very high amounts of damage because it's 2 special attack modifiers, and if you're boosting them correctly, it's gonna do a very large amount of damage. Or if you have CC'd, you're worried about crit and down attack. That is a very large amount of damage as well. Now, the thing is you can, generally speaking, only ever get 2 types of special attack bonuses. You can't get a back attack if they are knocked down or if they are floating. So you can't get crit down air, crit down back or crit air back, generally speaking. However, in all of my testing, all of my time on this game, and all of the knowledge I've asked around, on console specifically, I don't know why, I don't know how, but there is a weird interaction that allows ranged classes, so Archer and Ranger at the moment, can get back attacks while they are knocked down. But it's not a full back attack. It's only applying the additional back attack modifiers your class currently has, the skill currently has. So like, whenever the skill lands, whatever modifiers you have applied that increase back attack damage are still applying to the crit and down attack. So let's say this guy gets knocked down, right? If I back attack him from this side, I can still get down attack, but I'm also able to get crit, and I'm able to get down attack. So down, crit, and back. But I'm not getting the 2 times damage that back attack is supposed to do. I'm only getting the damage that I have increased to back attack. So the 10% from the Black Star, if I had the artifacts on, the 5% from that, the Blightstone, or the crystal, stuff like that. Food, whatever. So instead of getting, so it's like crits it's like 2.4 with my setup, and then down attacks, I think 3, so 5.4. Instead of getting 7.4 or 6 point whatever, I'm only getting 7.35. Now, that's not that much more damage. However, 30% more damage, not barring diminishing returns and how all of that works, is still very important. So grabbing the back attack crystals and the back attack items when you can is very helpful. Because you, 1, won't always be CCing a target. So they won't always be CC'd. And 2, when you get all 3 modifiers applied, you get to do so much extra damage. So it's not like a crazy amount. You're going from essentially 1,000 base damage, you're going up to 5,400 to 5,700. Doesn't sound like a lot, but 300 damage, so 300 more HP taken off. Most people, that's gonna kill. Like if the skill's 5,700 and they have 10,000 HP, or let's say they have 11,000 HP, 5.4 is not gonna kill. 5.7 does kill. That 30% can be the difference between the kill and not kill. If that interaction procs. I don't know how it's procced, I don't know what skills proc it. It's very confusing and it's very inconsistent. But the damage application has almost always been exactly the difference in the boosting every time. I touched on this shortly with the Frenzy Lightstone set back in the old guide. I've done a lot more research since then, and I still don't have a whole reason of why it happens or when it happens. but it is important to note. Second thing is how diminishing returns works in additive chains. Instead of doing a big old math lesson for you guys, I'm going to explain it as quickly as possible. Putting all of your bonus damages in one stat is not helpful. You want to split out your damages between two sets, whether that be crit and back, crit and down, or crit and air. You want to split your bonus damages between the two of them. You don't want to put all of your damage bonuses into just crit, or just down, or just air, or just back. You want to split between two different buckets. The reason is the way diminishing returns work in an additive chain means every additional set of crit damage is less impactful to your overall damage than if it were into a separate bucket and applying it that way. This is very important. This is very common knowledge across multiple MMOs, multiple types of games where build's a thing. You don't want to just stack all one damage type. You want to split your buckets, because more buckets means more damage. But BDO, for some reason, never really got on that train. It is very true. Diminishing returns are very potent. You want to split your damage buckets. That is really, really, really important. So, generally speaking, if you have crit damage on your lightstones, you want to run back attack on your crystals. Or if you have crit damage on your crystals, you want to run back attack on your lightstones. So on and so forth. That's generally how you look at it. I run a whole different mix set, but that's for a whole separate issue that will be in its own guide video if I ever get the time to do that later. But for now, this is going to stick to our ranger things. Back attack, very good. Crit, very good. Down attack, very good. Air attack, ignore. It doesn't do a whole lot. It's not that helpful. We have, like, 2 air attack skills, and both of them are inconsistent for air attacks anyways. So stick with what we have, which is good down attacks, good crits, good back attacks. That's going to cover our small tidbit into special attack modifiers and the weird inconsistencies that console has. With that, we're going to move on to positioning and then close out the video. Okay, so with positioning, it is really important of where you position yourself more than how you use your skills. Positioning on Ranger will make or break the difference. If you don't know your rotations but you have good positioning, you'll still do well. If you have good rotations but you don't know your positioning, you won't do well. And that's really important because of the way, unprotected we are, but the way class comps balance each other out. So for example, if this is, for PvP for example, if you're in a node board, this is your fort, right? We need to push the fort for occupation mode or construction mode. If you're doing that, you need to be pushing on the fort and it's going to have its walls and stuff. Your goal is not just going to be get up to the fort and drop skills. You're not a melee. You don't need to go there. It's not going to be, oh, I'm going to get as far as possible away and drop skills. No, because people are going to be coasting around the backline looking for you specifically. Your goal is going to be find somewhere advantageous to you. I like, personally, rocks and bushes. Sitting in a bush, yeah, you're still pretty easy to see, but when people are running around, there's VFX going everywhere and all that, they're gonna miss you. They're not gonna see you hitting and sitting in the bush. Especially if you're using a skill like this. Can't see me. Very helpful. Getting on top of rocks so you can rain down upon them, also really helpful. Now, generally speaking, you want rocks that require, more than just a jump to get on top of. There's none really right here nearby. But you want to get on a position that's away from other things. Either out of sight line with bushes, or out of general reach with rocks. That is your general goal. Another important part is when you're running away from people, you don't want to just backline. Because if you're just backlining, you'll run out of protections before they'll run out of chases, and you'll be pushing yourself further and further away from your team. So like, let's say my ball's pushing right up there, right? And I have someone come at me over here. I could just run backstep straight away from them, right? But now my ball's all the way over there, I'm all the way over here, and I'm out of protections. They're now going to kill me. Where instead, in the same situation, if I'm right here, and my ball's right over there, and they're pushing me, if I backstep, and I invasive dash, they now have to chase me into my friendly guild, my friendly party, my AOS team, whatever. They gotta run into my nonsense, and I can then continue escaping to the other side and drop skills. I'm now in the safe position. But let's say if they're pushing up to another ball and there's another one right there, I obviously don't want to jump straight through into them. But I also don't want to just backline. I still want to get closer, but then I want to move to the other side. So I haven't really moved all that far, but I've burned his dashes as he's chasing me around, and I've gotten close enough that maybe someone turns around to help. Your positioning is try and stay near your team to where they can help you, but not so close that you get hit by the people diving them. So you don't want to be max distance from your team, but you don't want to be melee with your team. You want to be somewhere kind of in the middle. Somewhere around, the 15 to 20 mark, somewhere in that range category. You don't want to be super far away because then you're useless. You don't want to be super close because then you're going to get CC'd and died. You want to sit somewhere kind of in the middle where you're still close by if you need help. That way you can keep your protections up and you keep rotating around them. Another thing that's important is knowing which rocks to get on top of and which rocks to not get on top of. And the reason is, Ranger has some weird workings with how her skill ranges are calculated, where it's not a straight line. Why it's not a straight line, I don't know, but it's not, and it's really weird. For example, if I get up on top of this rock, my range is 21 meters. If I use a skill at 21 meters, even though from me to where I'm shooting is exactly 21 meters, I won't hit that range. Because the way it works is it goes down and then out. So I'm only able to hit roughly the distance between me to the ground and then out. So like if I'm up 10 feet, I don't get 21 meters, I get 11 meters. That's not how it's supposed to work. But that is the way it works, and it's really inconsistent. Even if you see skill VFX play at that distance, they won't actually go that distance. It's a whole separate conundrum. Nothing's worse than Descending Current, which has its range so drastically shortened by being up on an elevation. Well, a Descending Current doesn't get that same issue. Descending Current does. So understanding when to use which skills, where to sit yourself, how to situate yourself will be very important. I could go through all of the different Node War territories and the different rocks you can sit on, but in Odraxia it's pretty good because I get decent elevations. Like up here would be about as high of a rock as I'd ever go on. I wouldn't go much higher than this because at this point I'm losing so much range that it's going to be really hard to continue to help my team. And it's also really hard for any class to get up to me to help when I eventually get jumped by a Lon or a Striker or another class that really has high movement, especially because Wukong, quote-unquote, is coming soon. And it's going to be really hard to help with that. So understanding where to situate yourself and how to situate yourself is very important. Keeping yourself somewhat near your guild or AOS team or AOA team, whatever PvP activity you're doing. You don't want to just run away from them. Running straight backwards, you're going to get yourself killed because you're not going to be able to run away more than they'll be able to chase you. Stay near your team. And always sit yourself somewhat behind them and off to the side. Not directly behind, but kind of diagonal. Like if my team's gonna be pushing the bridge, and I don't need to cross the bridge, like we're defending this line, I'm not gonna sit right here in front of the bridge. I'm gonna kind of come off to the side a little bit, like over here. Because as they push straight through, like, they have classes that just dive straight through into the back of the ball, they're going to be going right for me. But now I'm over here. So as they're fighting that ball, and that ball, I'm kind of at a good position to get some of those back attacks I was telling you about, where you don't have to be directly behind them, just kind of at the side of them. So I can now get back attacks while still helping the team, and I'm mostly safe from danger. And if someone were to come off to the side, now my entire team has back attack on them, they're going to get blown up a lot faster than I get blown up. This gives me an advantageous position. That's the kind of positioning you want to be going for. Straight back, straight forward is never beneficial for a ranger. You kind of always want to be off to the side, up on a rock, in a bush, hiding somewhere beneficial. So, with all of that, gear, Karazad's best in slot, hasn't, like, the gear changed a little bit, but not really. Skills did get changed a semi-decent bit. It's not crazy. Horses, I guess I can touch on that real quickly. Dine gives the AP buff, Crocodile set gives the AP buff, so that's what I go for. More AP per AP is very nice. Positioning and crystals, splitting your damage modifiers up is what you want to do. Positioning, never sit directly behind and don't run straight away. Kind of circle a little bit. Stay somewhat near the people you're with, but not close enough that you get hit by them. Skill rotations are roughly the same, just with some new flows that are interesting. Not necessarily good, but interesting. And then with next gen, our frame rates have increased, so our damage has increased, so overall Ranger is in a better spot than it was last time I did the guide. Even though we've been nothing but nerfed since then, we are in a better spot than we were because of the two very minor buffs with one the frame rate and two the damage reduction modifiers with the DP shreds on Will of Descending Current and Will of the Wind. But with that concludes the Ranger guide. I hope it covered everything you need. Have any more questions, I do have a Discord where I am in, and I can answer anything you need for Succession Ranger. You can always reach me there. Comment on the video if you have any more questions and you don't want to go to the Discord to reach me. I should be able to answer anything there as well. But with that, have a wonderful rest of your time, and enjoy being the most irritating elf on a rock that has ever graced BDO.